This is when I want to bring in David Warrington. Of course, you've maybe heard him here on the Fan this summer calling Waterloo Columbus baseball and softball games, and good seasons taking place right now for both of those squads. First things first, David, let's go back to last Friday. You called the doubleheader between Columbus baseball and Dike New Hartford. Dike New Hartford, with respect to the Sailors, has just been an absolute monster this year. You caught up with Coach Martin after the game. We were able to get some of that on the air on Monday. Appreciate that. What would you tell us, like I mentioned, starting with the Wolverines, about what you saw and, what does it look like for them to be able to make a state tournament? Because on paper, it looks like they can.
The thing about Dike New Hartford I noticed is nothing they do stands out, like makes your eyes pop. Nothing they do is extraordinary. They do everything really, really well and fundamentally sound. Like, they didn't have any home runs or hardly any doubles even, but they just made solid contact. They ran the bases well. The fundamentals were good. And the pitching's really good. I think they had maybe one error. It might have been zero the whole night. So they do everything fundamentally sound, and they do the little things right.
That's a team that's annoying to play against because you're just kind of waiting for that inning where they break and you get your double and you get your single and then you get an error. That's kind of how high school baseball and softball works. What's a big inning in college is a massive inning in high school because usually there's an error or two that's mixed in. And I remember, playing high school ball. A lot of times toward the end of a season, you play games all the time, right? I've talked about this with coaches that we've had on the show throughout the season. Is you play so much that you got to be really strategic about how you're using the little bit of available practice time. And when I was in high school, we would play a game or call it a drill, and we just call it 27 outs, where the coach would, albeit that's 9 innings, but you had to get 9 innings worth of errorless outs, and he had the fungo standing at home plate, just ripping it at anybody. And he was the scorekeeper. He was the official scorekeeper. But I tell you what, when you came out of a practice, whether it was, you got to 25 or 26 outs, or you got all 27, which actually did happen. We had some good teams. It really offered some confidence and peace of mind when you got into certain situations in games where it's like, okay, we're up by 1 and they've got a runner in scoring position and only 1 out. I felt like it kept everybody calm. So that probably speaks to, there's got to be some things behind the scenes there with Coach Martin and what he's been able to do with that team. Because like you point out, it's not like uber talent. It's not like they got guys who are going to play D1 baseball, not to my knowledge anyways. So that is interesting to hear. And that's what that team says on paper too. When you look at their stats, you look at the record and you go, well, these guys must be a juggernaut. And with respect to them, I think they'd probably agree. They're not a juggernaut. They're just a very good baseball team. How about Waterloo Columbus baseball? Obviously, they suffered a doubleheader sweep to what we were just talking about, a very good Dike New Hartford team. But they've got some high-level talent, and I would imagine you've seen some flashes from that team in a very, very loaded North Iowa Cedar League that leads you to believe that they could make a deep run, right?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, obviously Carter Gallagher sticks out. He's an absolute monster for them, but they've got kids. Connor Knutson comes to mind as one example that are really talented baseball players on that team. And they've shown flashes, like you said. Like, I was at Denver a couple of weeks ago, and they put up 5 runs in the top of the first on the road in a hostile environment. But the problem for them in these last few games I've called that they've lost has been the errors. I think they had 8. I had them down 4 against Denver in that loss, and they had 5 or 6 in both games on Monday against Dike New Hartford. So that's something where if they clean that up, they certainly win that Denver game if they don't commit 8 errors, and maybe they could have stuck around with Dike New Hartford a little bit longer in those games too.
Seems like perhaps offensively, though, that they're right there top shelf. Like, they're best in the batter's box against another team's best on the pitching mound. They can win that.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you look at Carter Gallagher, I mentioned, he has 5 home runs, I believe it is, on the year. Something like 40 RBIs, and he's got kids behind him that hit well as well. So, yeah, they certainly have the offense to make a run.
I had 6 my senior year, Carter. Step it up. Come on, bud. You're better than me. I know that. That's lame. I shouldn't even remember that stuff anymore. Well, how about we got to talk Sailor softball though before we get to some audio from the new Big 12 commissioner. If I'm not mistaken, I think it actually may all be from Bob Bowlesby talking about the new hire. But Coach Olmstead, man, he just keeps that beast going. They get a conference championship in the NICL Central.
Correct.
They've changed those divisions over time. So, I've been here 3.5 years now, right about the time that I learned the initial one. Then they change it up. But what do you see from Columbus softball? Because they haven't been perfect. They've taken some L's. But what do you see from them? What's it going to take for them to get back to state?
The thing I like about them is they can really do it either way. Because I call a doubleheader against Denver. They had one hit in game 2 and maybe 4 or 5 in game 1, and they swept it just because Haley Frost was so dominant in the circle that you can you can score those 2 to 3 run games and you can still find a way to win. But I've also called a couple games of them where they ended up ending it early because they exploded offensively for a dozen or 14 runs.
Yeah.
So they've got that offense. But even if that offense doesn't show up, they've also got the pitching from Frost that they can really get it done in a pitcher's duel or in a slugfest.
That just makes you think, depending on, what the district looks like, when are you going to run into a team where you're going to have all that on a given night? And how many times this season have they had that where they put it all together?
Yeah, that's a great point. They certainly don't have an easy road to state either. They start at home against Albernet, and Albernet is from 10 minutes away from my hometown.
You're a big Albernet fan from what I understand.
Something like that. Yeah, Central City, where I went to school, is big rivals with Albernet, probably our number 2 rival. But they play in the Tri-Rivers, and we've got one of the most stacked conferences in softball. Lisbon, Northland, consistently ranked top 5 in the state for Class 1A. And Albernet, the record might not be super pretty, but they're battle tested. That's going to be a test right away for Columbus. And after that, you've got Iowa City Regina, who's always been consistent.
And basically, sorry to jump on you there, but we will have information soon. It's kind of a hurry up and wait situation. We got to get our ducks in a row, see how the schedule works out, whether it's over here on the Fan or over on our companion station, Cruising KCFI. David will be back on the airwaves for postseason baseball and softball. Whether it's the Sailors or perhaps Don Bosco baseball, which is having another great season, of course, something to look forward to.